This unassuming little building has something amazing hidden underneath. And it's not a secret lair or a gold mine or a portal to Narnia. It is far more interesting than that. It's an underground toilet.
Back in the 19th century, everything was a bit grimy. Not only were diseases rife, but everyone thought that the best way to get rid of your, was to chuck it out the window.
Out of sight, out of mind, right?
Well, it was time to take a stand. No longer were you going to empty your ones and twos onto your neighbors' heads, unless you really didn't like them.
Oi.
So by the late 1860s, an ingenious English gent called Joseph Bazalgette created a revolutionary sewer network, and another Englishman called Thomas Crapper, yeah, that was his name, made the flushing toilet popular.
So you can flush away your crap. At the turn of the 20th century, this toilet technology was moving underground.
Underground loos were popping up everywhere across London because, well, shockingly, men, needed somewhere to go.
The lack of access to public toilets for women essentially functioned as a form of social control, reinforcing the idea that women belonged at home and rather than in the public sphere. As a result, women often limited their time away from home. Really? Now, Bruce Grove wasn't always this vibrant, busy high street that we know today.
Back in the 19th century, the area was mostly rural. There were fields, big houses, and the occasional stray goose. Classic pastoral vibes. But everything changed in 1872, when the railway came charging through like an excited Victorian toddler. With the new station at Bruce Grove, the area suddenly became commutable. More housing meant more people.
And more people meant more toilets. In 1910, in the heart of Tottenham, this little beauty popped up. And this wasn't just any underground toilet. Oh no, Tottenham was showing off. For starters, these cast iron railings, not your bog standard fencing. They are decorative, elegant cast iron beauties designed to make even going to the loo feel a bit more grand.
Ooh, la-di-da.
Inside, you have gorgeous tiling, classic early 20th century glazed brick, easy to clean, hygienic, and shiny enough that if you forgot your mirror, you could probably still fix your hair.
And then there's this cottage-style pavilion up top, added in the 1920s, timber framed and complete with a pitched roof and little flourishes that make it feel less like a toilet block and more like a fairy tale house. But it wasn't just built to look pretty. It was built because going to the loo in public was fairly unfair for fair maidens.
You see, men could roam freely, hop on trains, run errands, go to work, pop to the pub, and if nature called, no problem. Public loos exclusively for men everywhere. Hooray!
But for us women, not so much. Public conveniences for women were incredibly rare. And I don't just mean rare as in hard to find, I mean rare, like a sunny day on a British bank holiday weekend. This meant once women were out of the house, they had basically nowhere to, go, which made existing outside of the house for more than an hour or two basically a logistical nightmare. This was historically known as the urinary leash.
The 1910s and 20s were an era of massive social change. The number of women in the workforce was growing exponentially, and they were actually starting to be paid. They were organizing socially, getting involved in politics, and, shock horror, traveling independently. Women's rights groups such as the Ladies' Sanitary Association were campaigning for the provision of women's toilets in Britain. They argued that public toilets were a basic human right for women. And you know what? I'd probably argue the same.
And that is where this place comes in.
The pavilion was added specifically to provide even more toilets for women. Not because the Victorians had a radical epiphany, but because women were demanding the right to travel without having to hold it.
And although this may look like just another quaint little building, it was actually part of a quiet revolution, a space that supported women's freedom of movement, literally, and it symbolized meaningful change in public spaces being designed for everyone.
So, this place remained relatively unchanged for the next 6 decades, until those dreaded 80s, with its need for excessive hairspray and shoulder pads, when our throne lost its sparkle.
Attitudes towards public toilets were changing. Councils had less money to maintain them, fewer people were using them, and the entire UK network of public conveniences was shrinking. Bruce Grove was no exception to this. After decades of loyal service, they could not justify the cost of upkeep. So, in 1985, they closed their doors.
They boarded them up, walked away, and hoped the problem would politely solve itself.
But Here's the twist. Instead of knocking down Bruce Grove toilets and pretending like it never existed, someone decided that this building was worth saving. Like rediscovering an old CD at the back of your wardrobe and thinking, oh, this is actually a banger. Don't you forget about me. It's like Bruce Grove was calling out. The Grade 2 listing in 1997 meant that the building couldn't be demolished, couldn't be touched without permission. It was officially precious. Not something we usually associate with bodily functions. But as simple minds had feared, it was starting to become forgotten. Although the listing preserves and protects the building from its demise, you still need funding for things like mending the roof, removing the damp, and stopping teenagers from breaking in and looking for ghosts. So for decades, the building just sat here, lonely and crumbling, a 20th century relic that was in desperate need of funding.
Fast forward to the 2020s, Haringey Council, Historic England, and the Greater London Authority teamed up. They had funding, they had a plan, and most importantly, they had an appreciation for historic loos, which is niche, but very admirable.
The vision? Preserving the historic features, the railings, the tiles, this underground chamber, and bringing it back into the modern world to create a space that everyone could use. A community cafe, a bright and airy space, accessible toilets, and for women too, which, given the building's history, feels rather poetic.
We really wanted to celebrate the pavilion, so we wanted to use an architecture that sort of talked to the building, but framed it, celebrated it. And for me, it's a touchstone to women's movement. Sometimes with historic buildings like these on the risk register, people think it's not viable to bring them back to life because it's so costly. The cost is the result of 40 years of no funding, no maintenance. And so it's really important to learn how to maintain, how to care for historic buildings so that they never get to the risk register. And I think Historic England is doing a great job raising awareness on how to maintain, how to look after, and how to conserve historic buildings.
And in November 2025, the Bruce Grove toilets were officially removed from the Heritage at Risk Register, meaning the rescue worked. This building now has a future, and it won't involve anyone holding their nose.
I'm very pleased personally that, we had this opportunity to get this place and looking after the communities. They have a coffee shop right next to Bruce Grove Station, which early morning they leave for work, they come grab the coffee, go to take the train, to go to work. This road was dead. And you didn't want to pass through to this particular building. It was so bad, so vulnerable. But now it gives a very natural beauty back to this street,
Preserving the Bruce Grove toilets isn't just about restoring an obscure building. It's about the identity that comes with it. It's about regeneration and supporting small businesses and making high streets places that people actually want to come to again. So despite being only a loo, it's had an incredible past. From hygiene to women's independence to community life, this building has gone from cutting edge to dilapidated to downright lovely again. And sometimes, all it takes for community to flourish is a little cafe sat on top of an 115-year-old toilet.